All right, there we go. So today, again, we're just going to be covering items. We're going to go over creating a quote. We're going to go over creating invoices. And then towards the end, we're going to get into profitability, and we'll kind of look at some of the different things there and kind of see cost versus sale amounts, and then how we can calculate profit. So as we can see here, currently I am on my item list. Just get to the item list by left-hand column here and go ahead and click items. It's going to show me a list of all of my different items here. Then as with all of my lists, I've got a couple different views here. So all is going to show me everything. Inventory is only going to show me my inventory parts. Non-inventory will show me any intangible services I have. So this is going to be things like discount codes, labor, diagnostic fees, truck charges, things like that. And then assemblies. Assemblies we can think of sort of as boxes that we sell to a customer. So it's kind of one item that contains several different other items, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Can also include inactive, so if I want to see any inactive parts, just go ahead and check that. And then for filters, we've got category. So in this case, I've got it broken down into a bunch of different categories. So I've got HVAC parts, services, systems, and then I've got my plumbing division. Can also do price range and item types. Just give you a little bit more flexibility. Now the search field can search by a couple different things. I can search by the name or the actual item code. So I can come in here and I can type in MISC, and that'll pull up my miscellaneous code. Now it's also going to search the description as well as the category. So if I wanted to search for maybe a specific type of unit, so let's see if I have a carrier unit here. There we go. It's going to pull those up. And I can also do category or price range, whatever I need to do. On mobile, this items list is going to be a little bit more visual. We'll have tons of images and stuff, and we'll see where those come into play when we create an item here in just a second. We cover mobile in FieldEdge training session 2, which would have been yesterday. We have another one on Thursday. All right, so let's talk about creating an item. So I want to go ahead and make a new item. I'm going to go ahead and come up here to add item. All right, so now that we're on the item screen, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is take a look at my inventory type here. So my item type just kind of changes the way that this is going to behave inside of FieldEdge. So we're just going to run through these real quick. An inventory part is going to be a physical part that you stock. It'll do things like track quantities. When it's purchased, it'll go into your inventory asset account. It's really good for physical things that are going to be on the technician's truck or in the warehouse. Non-inventory parts, again, these are going to be things that are intangible, or maybe they could be things that you don't really necessarily want to keep track of. This could be nuts and bolts, tape, different consumable items, which can be set up as inventory, but we're not necessarily worried about tracking the individual quantities, so we can set those up as non-inventory. This will also be things like labor, diagnostic fees, truck charges, things of that nature. Next, we're going to have assemblies. Again, assemblies we can think of as sort of as a box. We're going to create an assembly here in a little bit, so we'll be able to see that set up in a little bit more depth. But essentially, we can use one code to attach a bunch of different things to the invoice. Next, we have the discount. That one's going to be pretty straightforward. Discounts allow us to provide a percentage-based discount to the invoice. Then finally, subtotal. This one's a little bit different than the others in that it kind of just does something special on the invoice. So what a subtotal will do is whenever you enter a subtotal in on an invoice, it'll look at all of the items that are above it, and it'll create a subtotal for those. This is super helpful in the situation where we might do multi-proposals to a customer. So maybe we quote them 3 different systems. We want to do it all in one quote instead of creating 3 individual quotes. We can go ahead and we can, build out system 1, add a subtotal line, build out system 2, add another subtotal line, and then build out system 3, and then add another subtotal line. And what that'll do is it'll show them the subtotal for the good option, the better option, and the best option. All right, so right now I have the inventory part selected. We can come in here and we can give this an item name. So here, maybe I'll do wrist pipe repair kit. Select my category. This one's going to be under plumbing parts. And then if I have a manufacturer's part number, I can just go ahead and throw that in there. I might not always have it, so. Allow price edit on mobile. Super simple field. That's just a yes or no. Can technicians edit the price of this item out in the field? So we're going to go ahead and say the guys are going to be able to edit this one out in the field. I'm just going to go ahead and check that off. Now, down in purchasing and sales information. First, we have our purchasing information here. Then we have our sales information. So starting with the purchasing information, we're going to see our cost. So this is a pretty small, pretty easy kit. Maybe this one only cost me about $7. I can go ahead and punch that in there. I can also see my COGS account or my cost of goods sold account. It's going to default to whatever our default is set to, but if I wanted to change this, I could. But I'm going to go ahead and leave this as my cost of sales. One note is that your chart of accounts does pull in from QuickBooks. So if I need to create a new cost account or new sales account, I can go ahead and I can create that in QuickBooks, and then it'll flow back over to FieldEdge. Next, we have the markup. If I go ahead and I put a markup code in there, we'll actually notice that the sales information, it's going to go ahead and mark this up based on a predetermined amount. I can also set a preferred vendor. So if I know that I'm going to go ahead and pick these up from Grainger most of the time, that in there. And then finally, under purchasing information, we've got our description on purchase transactions. In layman's terms, this is what's going to show up on your parts requests. So whenever we send something to the vendor, this is what they're going to see. So we'll do first pipe repair kit. And we'll go ahead and we'll say that's a all right, so over on our sales information here, first thing that we're going to see is the price or the rate. I've already put in a markup code, so it's going to go ahead and automatically look at my cost and mark it up based on how I've got that markup code set up. So in that case, it's going to come out to $21.35. And I've got my income account. Again, this will be your system default, but we can change it if we need to. So if I want this to go to a different account, I can absolutely do that. We've also got our default sales tax code. So here I can just tell us whether or not this is going to be taxed or non-taxed. We're in Florida, everything's going to get taxed, so I'm going to go ahead and select taxed. Then we've got our discounts. This one is more in relation to agreements. If a customer has an agreement with us, it might automatically discount the items, 10 or 15%, depending on what level of agreement they've got. If I want to make sure that an item is exempt from that, maybe it's my truck charge or my diagnostic fee, I can go ahead and I can just make it exempt. So that particular item won't be discounted when a customer has an agreement. So if I do want to make sure that this goes ahead and gets discounted for our customers, I'm going to go ahead and click on Apply All Discounts. And then description on sales forms. This is going to be the description that comes across over on the invoice for the customer. It'll also be what comes over on quotes. So I've got a cheat sheet here, so I'm going to go ahead and copy a description over. And we'll go ahead and we'll paste that in there. All right, so a couple other things down here at the bottom. Our asset account, again, it's going to pull the default. This is going to be my inventory asset account. Reorder points will let us know that after we've only got a certain amount, we can go ahead and we can reorder some of these kits. So I'm going to go ahead and say maybe we want to have 5 of these on hand at all times. Upgrade items and recommended items. I'm going to get into those in a little bit. I've got another item that already has them set up that I'll show you, and I'll kind of dive into those. But then we have our image. Images are super helpful, especially because the price book out in the field is visual. So everything has an image associated with it when they're looking at it. So we want to make sure that we upload images for really as much as we can. It gives a better presentation, not only to the technician, but also to the customer. So that visual price book can sort of be used as a sales tool. So I'm gonna go ahead and click add image here. And I've got my pipe repair. I'm gonna click OK. And now I've got that image in there. One point I do want to note is that we do find it works best if you use things with a white background. Typically, images with a white background are the easiest to find. And if everything has the same background, it kind of brings a sense of uniformity is the right word to your visual price book on mobile. It looks a lot better. It can also help with the load times. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Item here. It looks like my accounting server is not running. That is on another machine. I'm not able to access that at the moment, so maybe I'll change this over to a non-inventory part. And when I do change this over to a non-inventory part, we are going to get one additional field here, and it's going to be our cost type. This is going to be important on our profitability at the end. So I can have this non-inventory part come in as labor, other, or if this is something to do with subcontractors, we can set that as the type as well. See if they'll let us create that one. All right, doesn't look like it. Let me see if I can get that fixed. But in the meantime, I do have some other items we can take a look at. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump back to our list here. And let me see if it actually saved that in FieldEdge. It did not. No big deal. Got something else that we can use. So we'll do toilet repair. All right, so the next thing that I want to look at is going to be setting up an assembly and setting up flat rate. So here under toilet repair, we'll notice I've got 2. So I've got my toilet repair kit. That'll be essentially what we had just entered. It's the materials that we're going to use on a type of job. So I can open that up and I can see that it's set up pretty much the same way that we were just setting up our previous item. I'm gonna go ahead and open up toilet repair. So this one is going to be the actual service. All right, so this item type is set to assembly. I can see that I've got toilet repair as my item name or number. Category, it's set to plumbing service. And then the screen is a little bit different for assemblies. So once I select the assembly type, the screen is going to change a little bit. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to give us our description for sales forms. So it'll be what's going to pop up on the invoice for a customer. And then down here, we've got the items that are going to be in this box that we're going to sell a customer. So again, this is going to be one code that we can use as, say, a service. And in that service, we're going to include all of the materials that we need so we can go ahead and make sure that our inventory is accurate. And we can also save time out in the field so the technician doesn't have to go through, a ton of different parts and add a ton of different individual parts. He can just add them all at once using an assembly. So here I can see we've got that material item we created earlier. It's got our description and our price and our quantity. Now, one thing I do want to note is, let me go and clear this out, is that the pricing on an assembly is the sum of the parts that make it up. So I can go ahead and I can select an item here. Let me go ahead and add just a miscellaneous part here. And I go ahead and I can check on override price. My subtotal right down here is $25.40 right now, but if I add an additional $50, that's going to go up about $50. So we do have some flexibility here, but the total price will just be the sum of whatever prices we've got here. So if we've got two of those, it'll go up another $50. But in this case, I like it where it's at, so I'm going to leave it there. Then upgrade items we'll get into in just a bit. But I do want to talk about flat rate. So if you do flat rate, there's some setting that we can do, or setting up that we can do under settings, and then under our pricing rules, which is going to be right over here. I'm not going to dive into the setup of that just yet. Usually that'll be handled either by your success manager or your onboarding agent. But if I want to go ahead and make this a flat rate repair, I can go ahead and I can do that right away. So maybe this is going to take me a half hour to complete. I can just type in 0.5, do a half hour. And then I'm going to get a flat rate pricing table. It's coming through at 0. And that'll be, again, because my test database isn't connected to QuickBooks right now. So not a big deal, but usually we would get our different rates. So I'm going to go ahead and make this not flat rate for now. And then I could also add image to the repair. And we can also do upgrade recommended items. So I do want to take a second to talk about upgraded and recommended items. I do already have something that's set up for that. So that's going to be my leak repair. You can see here that when I search leak repair, I've got 3 different options. So this is sort of set up for a good, better, best scenario. So I've got leak repair 1, which is the good option, then all the way down to leak repair 3, which is going to be the best option, includes a float switch. Let's go ahead and select leak repair 1 here. All right, so this is going to be a pretty standard inventory type item. Then if I scroll down, I can see that I have some upgraded items entered here. I can just click on that and start punching in the code and it'll pull it up. And I've also got my recommended items. So the way that an upgraded item is going to work is it's going to create a group of items. And that group of items is going to show up on mobile. So whenever I open up leak repair 1, down at the bottom, it's going to say, hey, if you want to upgrade this, we've got a couple other options. We can go ahead and we can get it upgraded, have a better repair, or we do have a best option. So again, super helpful for good, better, best pricing. And it does kind of put them in a group. So if I go ahead and I look at leak repair 3, it is still going to show me leak repair 1 and 2. So just a heads up there, sort of goes ahead and puts them into a group, and we can just select whatever we need. Recommended items are going to be items that are going to be purchased with the service usually, or that could be recommended. So if we're doing a leak repair or a toilet repair, maybe we want to do like a septic purge or something. We could throw that in recommended items. That way, when we're out there on mobile and we're using mobile as a selling tool, it's going to say, hey, you're getting this service. It could be beneficial to also pick up this one or pick up this item. All right, so we've gone ahead and we've gone over creating items. Now we've created assemblies. So let's go ahead and put those to use. So let's go ahead and create a quote for a customer. Creating a quote, super, super simple. Go ahead and open up a customer here. All right, so let's go ahead and find a customer here. I'll just select someone here. And we'll do Shane Todd. All right, so now I'm looking at Shane's record. Just at a glance, I can see a bunch of different information. Doesn't look like he owes us any money. That's good. So go ahead and create a quote. You can see that we've got another quote here, but I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Quote. All right, so now we are on our quote screen. I can go ahead and I can choose my lead source so we can track how we're gonna, or how Todd heard about, or Shane Todd heard about us. Now I can work on building our quotes. So if I come down here to items, let's say that we're quoting a toilet repair. I'll go ahead and I'll put that in. And I'm gonna go ahead and select the toilet repair service here, which is gonna be a flat rate part, so it's gonna have labor and stuff built into it. And then now that assembly item is gonna be on the quote. So notice that the item here is kind of blue. If I go ahead and I click on that, it's actually gonna open up that assembly on the fly. And I could go in here and I can go ahead and I can add items. And if I need to change the quantities, I can do so here. One thing that we'll notice we're not able to do is change the actual amounts here on the individual items. That would be up here under materials, just again, because this is a flat rate. Go and select my sales rep, super important. We'll say Allison sold this one. Then I've got my quote date. It's always gonna be today. I can always change it. So next is gonna be our expiration date. This is always going to default to 30 days out, but I can always change it. I can do it for a week. I could do it for a year, however you guys want to do it, but it is always going to default to 30 days. All right, so we've got ahead and we've created this quote. We need to go ahead and we need to send it out to Shane. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click print. Let me go ahead and create this. There we go. So now I can go ahead and I can click print. And it's going to pull up a quick preview of the quote that we're going to send. In this case, maybe I want to send a personalized message. So I'm going to change my layout to quote here. And then we'll click on preview email. So what preview email is going to let me do is it's going to show me the message that is going to be sent to the customer. It's also going to give me the ability to edit that. So if I wanted to come in here and I wanted to say, make it a little bit more personal, maybe it's a big job and I want to make sure that they've got my cell phone number just in case, I can go ahead and I can punch that in here as well. For sales and quotes, typically I do recommend coming in here to the preview. We can set up templates and the templates are pretty good, but it never hurts to get a little personal. So we'll go ahead and we'll click cancel there. So we'll say that Shane gets it. Everything looks good. We want to go ahead and we want to move forward with the service. So I can come in here and I can set my status down to accepted. We've also got the rejected status. Hopefully I'll never use that, but if someone calls up and says, I definitely don't want to do that right now, we can set it to rejected and we got a little tracking there. In this case, I'm going to do accepted. When I click accepted, it's going to go ahead and give me two more buttons here. One is schedule, which is going to let me go ahead and create a work order for this. The other one is create job. Jobs are one of the more advanced features in FieldEdge. We can spend a whole lot of time talking about jobs on their own. So we actually have a dedicated training for jobs That runs on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Then before I click schedule here, I do want to just draw attention to anticipated profit and anticipated margin. These look really high right now. That's because my labor isn't added into this just yet. In FieldEdge, we have two different ways that we can track labor. We can track it based on the item, or we can track it based on our technician's time. So the way that I've got this database set up is through technician's time. So the profitability is going to be a little bit skewed up until I go ahead and I create that invoice. But on the invoice, it's going to be quite a bit more accurate than just having a default. So I'm going to go ahead and click on schedule, and we're going to book this out. So I go ahead and I can select task. One thing I do want to note here is that in front of all of my tasks, you'll see a little prefix. So I've got AC for some of them, and I've got P for others. So in this database, I'm set up for multi-industry. And then just kind of a handy best practice that we found, if you put in the industry or some kind of prefix, kind of just help for reporting. So if I know this is going to be an AC job, I know it's going to be categorized with my ACA stuff. And if it's going to be plumbing, it'll be categorized here. So this one is going to be for a toilet repair. So I'm going to go ahead and click my plumbing repair. Priority, we're going to set that as high. And then the lead source is going to carry through. And then I can add any notes. So let's go ahead and select a time. We'll say we're going to go out there today at 10, between 10 and 2, or 10 and 12, sorry. And we'll book that for later. All right, and we've created our first quote. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be invoices. So invoices are very similar to quote. So I'm going to come over to our customers. It's going to be very, very, very similar. All right, so let's find another customer here. And we'll do Jesse. All right, so here I am on the customer screen again. We're going to go ahead and create the invoice. So create the invoice, very similar process. I'm going to click on invoice instead of quote. And we're going to click add invoice. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is select my lead source. Say they gave us a Google. And we'll set our sales rep. Say it was Ben. Go ahead and select our item here. So we're going to do that toilet repair. And we'll add that there. I can select my class. If you're not using classes inside of QuickBooks, we definitely recommend it. Just kind of gives us a way to break down sort of different departments of your business and see how they're doing on the reporting side in QuickBooks. If it's not something that you're already doing, then definitely reach out to your customer success manager or your onboarding agent. Be happy to help out for you. Also got our tax group, so if I need to change that, we could do that there. Terms, how's the customer going to pay us? We're going to leave this as COD, but if it's a business, I can set that to net 30. That is going to pull from the customer record, so we can always go to the customer record and change their default. All right, so like I said, super simple. That's it, we've created the invoice. As with the quote, we can open up the assembly and we can edit anything that we need to. We can add as many items as we want, but that's the gist of it. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on create. And it's going to take us over to the payment side. We can take a payment, and then I'll go ahead and say we're taking a check here. Punch in my check number and the amount. I'll go ahead and click on save. And then I can do finalize and post to QuickBooks, select my resolution, and click confirm. Then it's going to go ahead and it's going to save that, and it's going to post it over to QuickBooks. So two more things that I really want to cover. First one is going to be, let's create that, or take that quote, let's get that converted over to an invoice. And in that process, we're also going to add some time for the technician to go ahead and make sure that we've got that that labor time in there, so we can go ahead and we can track costs, so that when we get into profitability, we'll have something there. So the first step is, remember, I scheduled that quote. So I'm going to come to my dispatch board. We can see here that I've got my call for Shane Todd. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my promised appointment time. Go ahead and click on that. It's going to highlight the area that we can select. And I'm going to go ahead and assign this to Ben. All right, so I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to add some time for Ben, so that way we can see the labor costs when it gets to profitability. Come over to my timesheet. I'm going to select Ben, and we'll say that he was traveling. And we'll do from 8:30 to 9. And we'll say that he was working from 9 to 10. One handy tip, if you will, all of the time fields in FieldEdge do also handle 24-hour time. So if I wanted to say 3 p.m. here, I could type in 1500 and I would put it in there. If you're like me, I prefer doing it that way. It's just a little bit quicker, but I can also go in and I can type in, 3 p.m. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and save this now that we've got some time. We're going to leave the status as unchanged. All right, so once I schedule out that work order, it's going to go ahead and it's going to automatically create the new work order and put the invoice on it. So if I come here, this is off of the quote that we were looking at, and I can see right away it's got the items on there. Any changes I made on the quote are going to carry over. It's going to carry my class over. So as soon as I click that schedule button, it's going to make that difference, and it's going to go ahead and convert that quote from an invoice, or from a quote into an invoice. So the conversion process is super simple. We just go ahead and we take the quote, we schedule it, and then it creates that new work order with that quote already converted on it. So when the technician goes out, he's already got his invoice, and he can go ahead and he can just collect payment, maybe add any non-billable items that he might have used on the job, and he's good to go. So now let's talk about profitability for just a second. So inside of FieldEdge, we can do estimated profitability. I do say estimated because the end-all be-all is going to be QuickBooks. Usually FieldEdge is going to be super close, but every now and then you might have something in QuickBooks that changes it. Maybe there's a bill or an expense that's entered directly into QuickBooks that might throw the profit off just a little bit from what's in FieldEdge, but usually it's going to be pretty close. So right here, now if you remember looking at the quote, these were pretty wild. It's because I didn't have any labor cost in there. Now I've gone ahead and I've put some time on here for the technician. So I can see that my estimated profit is about $1.46, and my estimated margin about 1.73%. So that's not super good. We did turn a profit at the end of the day. Usually we're going to want that to be a lot higher though. So I'm going to go ahead and click on view details just so we can see what exactly happened there. It's going to give us a nice breakdown up at the top. So our invoice amount, material cost, labor cost. Then it's going to go ahead and do what it needs to do, and it's going to get us our profit. Then it's going to give us our gross margin over here. So down here I can see just kind of a quick breakdown of what's happening. So I can see here that my toilet repair, My cost is $8 on that, so the cost itself is pretty low. Sold this service for $21.96. And then down here, this is a flat rate part, so we've got labor and stuff involved. So I've got my labor for the toilet repair, and that's going to be $62.50 for a half hour. Now, Ben took an hour working on that job, so Ben's labor cost is kind of where that margin's getting eaten up at. So Ben took a lot longer on the job than maybe he needed, or maybe that we had anticipated for. And that's why my margin's going to be as low as it is. But here I can see the cost per hour, so I can see his travel time. That's got some costs associated with it as well. And we've got his work time, which also has some additional. And then if I've got subcontractors, I can also see them here. But it's going to go ahead and at the bottom here, it's going to give me a breakdown of my labor cost. So I can see that my labor cost on this job was $75. Even though we haven't entered in our labor on the invoice anywhere, it's going to automatically calculate that. And that's set up. We can do it by employee. So the overhead for different employees is going to be a little bit different. Just in our settings, and then employees. Then we'll go in here and we'll open up Ben. All right, so here I've got Ben, and I can see that his employee hourly labor cost is set to $50. So if I've got a master tech, their overhead is going to be more than if I have an apprentice. So we can go ahead and we can put that in there, and it'll cost accurately based on who we send out. Now, like I said, that's one of two ways that we can track the cost. I prefer it this way just because it's, at the end of the day, going to be a little bit more accurate. But we can track items or labor cost based on the item as well. But again, that one, is fixed. It's a little bit harder to calculate. It's a much more manual process. Whereas I can do it this way, I can have it automated, and I can have it be pretty close to accurate. All right, so a bit of a shorter one today, but today we definitely got a lot of helpful information. So today we went through creating an item, the different types of items, and creating assemblies, creating flat rate items. We also talked about creating quotes, getting those quotes converted to invoices, as well as creating invoices. And then we wrap it up by looking at the profitability. So if you haven't already, some of you already have, but go ahead and leave me your name, your company. And if you want to shoot me a private message, you can also include your email address, and I'll make sure that we get a recording of this training over to you. And then in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this meeting up for 5-10 more minutes. Just in case you guys have any questions, I can go ahead and I can get those answered for you. All right, Wes asks, when entering a time invoice for labor, is it possible to actually take the time that they were at the job automatically to the invoice? So if we are tracking labor based on the item and not based on technician time, no, we do have to go ahead and we have to calculate it. That being said, we can look at the timesheet, we can get a total there, or out in the field, technicians need to add their labor. There's a little sync time button up at the top. They can just go ahead and click on that, and it's going to show them the amount of time that they've worked, so they can go ahead and get that punched in for you out in the field. Wes asks if we can accept an expired quote. So they call in 32 days, so 2 days after it expires. Can we easily reopen it without having to create a new one? Or can we just change the status from rejected? You absolutely can. We can just go ahead and we can use that same quote, but it is going to let you know that that quote has expired. So maybe we might need to update some prices, but if it's 2 days after, maybe we just want to go ahead and we want to get that work done. We can just go ahead and switch it over to accepted. Anytime. All right, guys, looks like that's it for the questions today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close the meeting here. But if you have any additional questions, definitely reach out to either your success manager or your onboarding agent. Happy to get those handled for you. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and shoot me over your email, and I'll make sure we get a copy of this sent to you. Thank you so much. You have a great day.